Hi again, everybody. It's me, Dr. Highfish, or Jamie, whatever. Uh, anyways, if you're watching this, I'm guessing you probably saw part 1 of the sketch Q&A chat thingamajig that I did. If not, obviously check the videos, because there's a part 1 where I answered a bunch of questions. Because that's the goal of these, is I reached out to people on my Discord server and I asked if they had any questions for me about Amalgamate, and I have been answering them while doing this cute sketch. And I only got through 6 questions last time. Surprise, surprise. It takes Jamie forever to say anything. And I'll try to get through at least 6 more. So last time, I only managed to answer questions from Melody Snowflake, and I still have 6 more questions from her. She had many questions. Also, I apologize again for the terrible lighting. I know it's so bad. But I'm just doing the best I can. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. As I just said, these next 6 questions are all from Melody Snowflake, who is one of the people who runs the Amalgamate audio project. So Melody is awesome. Anyways, so her next question is really easy, at least. She asked, what are your nicknames for all of the V3 cast? I think this question is coming because I mentioned to her on a Discord call that I had nicknames for some of them. I will say I have nicknames for some. I don't have nicknames for every single one of the kids. And I don't even know where most of these nicknames came from, so for some reason, Tsumugi, I call her Tsumugers. I have no idea why. The really weird thing is I was playing V3 with my roommates, and I had been consistently calling her Tsumugers for like 20 hours before like one of my roommates was like, "Why'd you call her Tsumugers just now?" And I was like, what do you mean? I've always called her that. And he's like, no, you don't. And I was like, but like every time she pops up on the screen, I'm like, hey, Tsumugers. So I don't know why I call her that. But also one that has actually appeared in Amalgamate is I do call Kibo Keebs. Again, no idea why. It's like another one of those things, like they pop up in the game and I'm just like, hey, Keebs. So those few moments where like Kaito calls him Keebs, that's just like me, just like being funny, being like, hey, Keebs. I call Gonta Darlin. I feel like that one's like pretty obvious where that would have come from though. Like, I mean, just, it's Gonta, right? Like, every time I see him, I'm just like, hey, darling, like, how you doing? You're so adorable. And I call Shuichi Blueberry Muffin. I feel like that needs no explanation once again though. Like, look at him. He's an adorable blueberry muffin. So cute. And then Kokichi, I always just call him my best boy. My ultimate best boy. To the extent that like I work at conventions, like in the artist alley a lot, and I have a friend who I've been getting into Danganronpa. He's on the 2nd game right now, but he knows about the little purple hair kid that's like my fave. But for a while he didn't even know the kid's name. He would just like point at cosplayers at conventions and be like, hey, it's your best boy. So it was just like my name for Kokichi was just, it's my best boy. Anyways, Yeah, I think those are the only ones. I can't think of any other nicknames that I have. It's too bad I don't have a nickname for Kaito. I feel like I should, right? What's like a good nickname for Kaito? Sound off in the comments if you have a good nickname for Kaito that isn't like, you know, something cheeky that Kokichi would call him, like ultimate stupid head or something. In a similar vein, these have different tips. Hold on, I'm confused. Nah, this one's just duller from age, I think. Well, anyways, yeah, in a similar vein, Melody also asked, apart from Kaito and Kokichi, like, who is your favorite V3 character? That's a tough one. I feel like I keep going back and forth between multiple options here. Probably Shuichi, because he's such a good boy. I mean, come on, Shuichi, he's a blueberry muffin. It's funny, I was telling one of my roommates about Amalgamate, and he was like, I was kind of sad that, like, you've removed the protag. He's no longer the protag, like, Kaito has taken over, and I was like, how dare you imply that I would ever, like, not love Shuichi. The story's somewhat about him still. But, yeah, I don't know. I'd say probably Shuichi. I also do just absolutely love Gonta, my darling. I know it's kind of shocking. I feel like, I don't know, some people get kind of weird about it if you say, like, oh, like, my favorite character is Kokichi, but I also love Gonta. And they're like, that's, a conflict of interest. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's more complicated than that. You can love them both. Also, Mew is just like my guilty pleasure. Don't at me. I don't know. Like, I talk like her a lot, actually. Obviously, I'm not gonna do that here, but anyone who's like known me a long time would be like, oh god, Mew is just Jamie on crack. I actually really want to cosplay Mew eventually. I was supposed to cosplay her for Halloween last year, but then I got talked into doing a different costume because it had been on my list for so long. So, fun fact, for Halloween last year, I was Blind Mag from Repo the Genetic Opera. Anywho, the next two questions are similar, but I took notes ahead of time so that I wouldn't stutter too much, but I answered them in a way where they're somewhat different. So I'm going to keep them separated instead of combining them. So the next question is, what is the writing process like for Amalgamate? And that's an interesting question, because it's chaos. God, even though I like wrote down some notes for this, I'm still like, because like, okay, here's the thing, like, so the next two questions, it's like the first one is, what's the writing process like? And then the next question after that is, how is every chapter created from start to finish? And I think those are technically two different questions, right? Like the way you write a whole story versus individual chapters is different when it comes to fan fiction. Like that might not necessarily be true of like novel writing, let's say, but when you're doing like, at least the way I'm doing this fanfic, where it's what do you call it, like where it's like coming out in pieces instead of all at once. I don't know, there's like a word for that. Look at me being a writer with my vocab. I don't know, whatever. So yeah, I think because I do write it chapter by chapter, the questions should be separated. But if we're talking about the writing process overall, so some of you have probably heard that phrase, I'm probably totally wrong about this. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I think it was George R.R. Martin from A Song of Ice and Fire series who said, God, I hope I'm not wrong and I'm like not crediting the wrong person here. Seriously, correct me if I have the wrong person that I'm quoting. But I think it was George R. R. Martin who said, there's like two types of writers. There's gardeners and architects. And the idea is that like architects, they plan everything in advance in like meticulous detail. You know, those are the people who write like really extreme outlines, and then they follow it perfectly. And then gardeners, they don't do that. Like, they just like start writing and then kind of like see where they go from there. I personally like to do a combination of the two. So when I started Amalgamate, like obviously I had a plan. I knew I wanted to rewrite chapter 5 of V3, and I thought it would be really cool to rewrite chapter 6. I didn't know if that would happen. I was like, let's just kind of see how this goes, and if I get to do that, then hell yeah. So yeah, there was like a vague plan. Like I knew the elevator pitch, right? I went into it like Kaito doesn't kill Kokichi. They have to wait it out, basically, like get through the trial, then get to the antidote. That was the defining feature of the story. But as far as like gardening goes, I'm like, I like to plant little seeds as I'm going and then kind of wait and see what takes root. So it's like I have a plan, but I'm like very, very open to like what happens with that plan. So the writing process is kind of like, I have a very vague outline for Amalgamate that's been kind of growing as I go. Like I have little pieces and then I kind of keep adding to it. It's like I always know like A to C, but sometimes point B is like nebulous. So my notes are a disaster. Like it's chaos, because it's like some of them are on my computer, some are on my phone, some are like written in like random places on paper. Some of them are like flooded throughout the document. Like it's such a mess. Some are in Google Docs, some are in Word. Like it's, anyone looking at it would probably not trust me with the story, I'm gonna be honest. They'd be like, oh my god, this person has no clue what they're doing. But I do. There is a method to the madness. Because it's all really like kind of organized in my head, surprisingly. So yeah, I have this very vague outline, and I never start a chapter without at least having like that game plan in mind, where I'm like, I know I need to hit this point, this point, this point. I'd like it if the next chapter hit this one and this one, and then maybe like the chapter of that we kind of like hit this one, you know. And that's kind of how I work as I go. But yeah, the notes process is terrible, because like sometimes like ideas also just like come to me really suddenly, and I'm like, ooh, what if we did do that? Like that would fit like right in with the plan I already have, and like, yeah, let's like write that down and kind of see what happens. But there's definitely like things that don't, you know, like any garden, some stuff is not gonna take root, and that's fine too. Like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know there's been a few things in the story where like I wanted to do something and it just isn't happening. Like I can't seem to get it to fit, and that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So moving on from that, like the next question, I think I can get a little more specific, which is the, you know, how is every chapter created from start to finish? Because for that, like, I do have like a surprisingly specific process compared to the chaos of the rest of it. So yeah, like I was saying, like I go into every chapter with like an idea of what I'd like to do. I don't always know if I'm going to pull that off, but it's like, you know, here's the goals. And sometimes, like, it depends on the chapter. Sometimes I will actually write like a fairly detailed outline for the chapter, and sometimes I just dive right in, like 100% just Leroy Jenkins that shit. So I feel like I do that more often than outlining, if I'm being honest. Because I'm so bad at sticking to the damn outline. It literally, it says like in my notes here, like under the question, I wrote start with vague outline, but rarely stick to it. So yeah, I tend to just kind of start writing just immediately. And I don't even like hesitate. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is ultimately gonna be how the chapter opens, but let's just write the scene that I think is gonna be the opener, and let's just see where we go from here. So yeah, I tend to just like write the whole chapter in one go. I don't like write scenes and then like go back to other things. Like I just go all the way through it. So this might actually explain why the chapters are so damn long, is because that first pass through that I do, it actually tends to be like a fairly normal chapter length. But the problem is that it's like, how do I put this? It doesn't have any meat on the bone. Bone on the meat bone, yeah. So, I kind of like to say that like that first pass through is like a skeleton. I just write like a big old skeleton, but that's all it is. Like it's missing all the good stuff. So I write it and then I just go right back to the beginning, and then I do like another pass through, and that's when I start adding all that meat. Like that's when like a lot of times like scenes get added, you know, like I might go back into the chapter and be like, wow, this one scene went way too fast. We need to like slow it down and add some like extra conversation or like some introspection from Kaito, or like I might like suddenly realize that there's like an interesting opportunity in the chapter that I missed, and so like I go back in and add that scene into it. And I think a lot of the like really emotional stuff tends to get added in the pass-throughs that I do. Like I think a lot of times like the first time I write the chapter, like I'm not super focused on that stuff. Like I just want to get the plot down, and then as I'm going back through it over and over, like that's when I'm like, time to get serious, time to get all the feels on paper. And so that's why it takes me so long sometimes though, because like, yeah, like I write a chapter and then I reread it, and then I reread it again and again and again, and every single time I'm like adding content. I might be deleting some content too, but I tend to be adding a lot. And it takes quite a while. But But yeah, I reread it like over and over and over. And then the editing process starts to get like a little more specific. It starts to come down to like getting all the wording and the pacing like perfectly like written out. So that's when I start like just rewriting certain sentences like over and over until everything is like exactly the way that I want it. And then eventually I have a little trick I use that I highly recommend to anybody who likes writing. Read it out loud. Seriously, I cannot stress this enough. Because just because like something sounds good in your head doesn't necessarily mean it actually sounds natural out loud. I've had so many instances where like I thought a sentence sounded great and then I'm like reading it all out loud and then I'm like, ugh, like, yeesh. So yeah, I read the chapter over and over in my head, adding stuff, moving stuff around, fixing things. But then when I'm like more confident in it, I read it out loud several times. And that's when I like am able to catch like really awkward sentences, like weird dialogue, things that just do not sound right. And when I'm more confident with that, that's when I kind of do these like speed run reads, like to the point of it being like ridiculous. Like nobody like probably reads as fast as what I do, but like out loud, like I'm just like blah, 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 and I just like super fast go through it. It's a really good way to catch, not only to like check the flow to see like, does this really like, does the pace really like move the way you want it to, and you know, it doesn't have weird slowdowns or boring parts. But it's also a really good way to check redundancy. Like if you've overused a certain word too many times, or like repeated something like a sentence like more than once, or maybe a character is reiterating things a few too many times, like you're gonna notice it on those speed runs because you're gonna be like, wait, I just said that, you know? So I really, really recommend for anybody who's writing, like read your stuff out loud, and if you can, read it really super fast out loud too. But yeah, after I've done those pass-throughs, that's when these days I pass the chapter along to the beta reader, which is J Kitty. I think it's J Kitty Trash Crash on AO3. I didn't have a beta reader originally. I've always been like a big like lone wolf kind of person. Like the thought of like having a beta reader, I was like, oh no, I can't. I'm like so bad at, I don't know, collaborating, or like I get like embarrassed. I can't do it. So yeah, I wasn't gonna have a beta reader, but I don't know, JK and I got to talking. We actually started talking about Silent Hill and not V3, but whatever. Yeah, we got to talking, and she tended to have like really good suggestions on chapters and stuff, and it just like at a certain point, like she had kind of said like, you know, I can always beta read it, and eventually I'm like, you know, I think she's right. she got a point, because her suggestions are good, and I think it would be good to have extra eyes on this, because I don't know, I wouldn't say like I was confident with the chapter 5 rewrite part of Amalgamate, because honestly I don't feel like I'm ever confident with any of this. Like I'm really not. But once like the chapter 6 rewrite stuff started, I started getting real nervous. Like I was really struggling to like get myself to even just call it quits on a chapter, because I would just like be spiraling in circles endlessly, worrying about it. And it helps to like have an extra set of eyes on on the chapter, you know, who can either reassure you that it's actually looking great, or tell you, no, this is actually a problem right here. So yeah, these days I pass the chapter along to J Kitty once I'm more confident in it. And I like to say she's the poison tester, because she makes sure that the content isn't accidentally going to poison the readers with its terribleness. I guess JK's just immune to venom. But yeah, so we kind of, you know, she leaves me notes, and I rewrite some stuff and take things into consideration, and then after that, like, I just do the typo checks, which I know aren't perfect. I'm sure some stuff slips through, but I do try really hard. Like, I post the document into AO3, and then I read it again to check for typos, and then even after I've just hit the update button, I go back in, like, even though it's like technically live, like, I go back in and I like reread it anyways, looking for typos. And it's not perfect. I reread the entire fic recently and found a few typos, and I'm just like, how is that possible? Like, I must reread every chapter like 30 times minimum, but somehow, like, things still slip through. It's so frustrating, but I really try. But anyways, that's how that process goes for each chapter. It is tedious, I'll admit. Like, sometimes I have to take breaks because, like, I've reread the chapter so many times that it's like my eyes hurt. Like I can't even like process the content anymore. But yeah, that's the gist of it. So Melody's next question, I guess, would also count as kind of being about the writing process. She wants to know, are there any deleted scenes that you can tell us about? So I definitely do delete stuff sometimes as I'm going. Like, a lot of times, like, it's usually smaller things, like certain sentences or something. I'll just be like, we don't need this, you know, like maybe some like inner monologue from Kaito. Like, I'll be like, yeah, you know, this is redundant, like, get rid of that, get rid of this. It's kind of rare for me to delete entire scenes. If I do, it's probably because of time. Like, a chapter's just going on too long. I was trying to think of like really good examples. The one that comes to mind the most, I guess, is the searchlight memory in chapter, was it 11 or 12? 11 or 12, whatever. You know, the searchlight memory where they're at the orphanage? Originally that scene actually did go on a bit longer, and J Kitty actually read the version where the content was still there. It's probably still on a Google Doc somewhere. Yeah, originally the way that scene ended was it didn't end with just like, it was like Kaito like pushed Kokichi over and was like, oh crap, I actually upset him. One of those like, oh my god, Kokichi's a human being moments that it seems like so many people have to have before they get it. Not that I'm mad about it or anything, whatever. So originally, yeah, he pushes Kokichi over, and Kokichi's upset, of course, and is all like, you know, you big stupid jerk. And Professor Itabashi actually comes back, like, you know, because they've seen the scuffle that's been going on, him and the adults. So he actually comes back and helps kind of fix Kokichi up a little bit. Like, you know, just kind of like looks at his, like, you know, skinned knee and stuff, and is like just trying to be like nice and reassuring, which of course Kokichi's kind of like in his usual like fuck off mode. But what's interesting is that during that scene, yeah, Itabashi's helping Kokichi, and then Shuichi's uncle actually comes to get him. There was a whole thing where yeah, his uncle comes to pick him up, and it was kind of interesting, actually. Like, it's a shame it ended up getting cut. I think it was good that it got cut. I mean, it really did go on way too long, but it was interesting just because we sort of see a bit of envy from some of the kids, you know, seeing Shuichi get picked up by a family member, and kind of like some interesting envy from Professor Itabashi, you know, that like, well, that guy found the kid he was looking for, but I didn't, you know, like it was interesting. It was also something that made it kind of interesting was that Shuichi's uncle says that like, oh, well, your parents, they fled the country during the tragedy just now, like they're actually in the US or something getting work, like we'll reunite with them eventually. And after Shuichi gets taken away, Kokichi actually mutters that the uncle's a liar, which has interesting implications, you know, like, what is he lying about? I almost wonder if maybe Shuichi's parents did not make it out of the tragedy. Perhaps the uncle can't bring himself to say that, or perhaps the parents don't plan on reuniting with the family and the uncle can't bring himself to say that. You know, we don't know, but it is interesting. But yeah, I sadly did have to cut all of that out. It just, that whole, because I don't want the searchlights to be the focus of the story. Like, that was never the plan. I'm not writing the story out of any interest as far as, like, I don't want to put headcanons, which, by the way, none of the searchlight stuff is headcanon stuff for me, like, at all. Like, it's not like that. Like, I genuinely don't have any headcanons that are, like, particularly useful for Amalgamate, and if they are, they're probably already kind of lurking in the story anyways. But yeah, like, this fic isn't supposed to be an excuse for me to, like, write out some backstory I imagined for these kids. It's not the point. So the searchlights are just there, you know, for the plot of Amalgamate, as far as, you know, mysterious memories and what is the mastermind's goals and blah blah blah. But yeah, I never want them to be the focus, and so they shouldn't dominate too much time in a chapter. So as cute as all that orphanage stuff was, that whole scene just went on way too long. But the reason I'm even telling y'all about it is I actually was kind of hoping to insert that scene in it later and finally do the Shuichi getting picked up by his uncle scene, but I just don't see it happening. I think we're in too much of a time crunch now, and we just really, we're kind of at the point in the story where, like, if something isn't, like, vitally important, we really kind of just need to move on. You know, we're heading towards the finale at this point, so I'm willing to tell y'all about that deleted scene because as much as I was hoping to maybe find a place to insert it later, I really don't think that's gonna happen. So there you go. There's some bonus background content for you. that Professor Itabashi fixed up Kokichi a little after he got all messed up on the playground. Thanks, Maki. And that Shuichi's uncle did come to pick him up that day, but was apparently lying about his parents in some capacity. If I think of any other scenes that got deleted, I'll tell you all about them sometime. That was the only one I could really think of, though. So let's see, the last question Melody had for me, so I'm wondering if maybe I'll wrap it up after this, and then we'll do like a part 3 where I cover some other people's questions. Maybe. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the upcoming questions, and they're a bit loaded from some other people. So yeah, why don't we wrap it up after this one, because we'll go on a light note. So sorry, I know I didn't get like a lot of drawing done today. I was like really rambling a lot, but I don't know, I'm just kind of taking my time. I feel like the last few times I did stuff like this, I kind of rushed the sketches a little, because I just was like, get her done like before the video's over, and then I kind of thought the sketches like didn't look that good. So I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just gonna take my sweet time, and we're just here to chat, right? Yeah, the final question is, how long had you been planning for Oko-san to be in the story? Oh, Oko-san. So the thing with that is, we're talking about architects and gardeners. This is a perfect example of me having seeds I wanted to plant and just being like, boy, I hope I get to do that. Because, I've played V3, I've watched a bazillion Let's Plays of V3, and like, every single time I see Himiko's lab, I can't help it. I'm such a softie, and I'm just like, there's live animals in there. There's a whole cage of birds. I think there's like 4 birds, right? And so like when the school starts like blowing up and stuff, like I can't help it. I just immediately like I started thinking like, are the birds okay? We never find out. I like to imagine that they just, they flew away as Kiba was blowing everything up. But we don't actually know, and I'm just like, I don't know. I was just like, I wanted to be able to confirm in my new Amalgamate canon that those birds are fine. They lived. So I always wanted to at least address it in the fic. I was like, at some point we have got to come across those dang birds, and I have to prove that they're okay for my own sanity. But was I planning on having like a specific bird who would become this like emotional support animal for the kids, especially Kokichi? No, I wasn't quite expecting it, like if I was gonna do it, I guess I didn't plan for it to happen as early in the story as it did. It would have been like a late stage thing of like, oh, we go to Himiko's lab and free the birds. But I don't know, it was just like a spur of the moment thing where I'm like, well, the kids kind of like, they went off to their rooms and stuff. Maybe Himiko fetched a bird for her magic trick. So we have a bird now. So yeah, I guess my answer to the question is I was always going to address the birds. I'm not ending this fic until I am able to guarantee that these birds are okay. And they all made it out. But yeah, Oko-san was maybe like a little bit unplanned. And if you're wondering about the other birds, don't worry, I got you covered. We will get there soon. Actually, this isn't a question somebody asked, but I do want to address this really quick. Because I just mentioned Kibo. I don't know, this was just like something I was thinking about recently. Somebody pointed out to me that I keep spelling his name as K1B0, But I guess if you like chat with me on like Discord or like, you know, AO3 comments and things, I still tend to write his name as Kiibo, like casually. And I guess I just don't even have any idea why I'm doing that. I don't know why it started. I don't know why I'm doing it. I barely noticed I was doing it. So, if anyone's like, why do you keep spelling his name all formal in the story when time and time again we've seen that casually you write it the same way friggin' everyone else does? I have no idea. I don't know why I started doing that. But now it's too late. I can't take it back. So this is how we're spelling his name in this story. Similarly, I said I was gonna end on a positive note with Oko-san. Now I feel like I'm gonna end on a controversy note. But I feel like it's gonna bother me if I don't address this, so I'm just gonna say it, and then maybe I'll find something funny to end on. So I'm sure people have noticed that I spell Kokichi's name Oma as O-M-A, and I know a lot of people probably don't like that. I've seen that tag on AO3 that's like, it's Oma, not Oma, you heathens. Allow me to defend myself really quickly and as nicely as possible. Please just, you know, let me have this here. So I actually majored in Japanese in college. I had been there before in high school. I had actually been studying the language for quite a while and just eventually was like gonna make a career out of it. So yeah, I studied Japanese and linguistics, and then I went to school in Japan for a year, and then I actually worked there for a couple of years. I was one of those people who like went through those like teaching English programs, but they knew I was fluent in Japanese, so they also had me like translating for the local government, and like speech translating and things. So my Japanese skills, I guess you could say, they're very like formally taught, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like these rules change constantly as far as like what is considered like textbook acceptable. But the way I was taught was that, so, you know, I don't want to like make this complicated for people who don't know anything about how Japanese works, but the whole, you know, extended vowel thing you see sometimes, right? Like, yeah, sometimes you see it as like I, you know, things like that, but like a lot of times you see the OU. So OU is an extended O vowel, and when you are romanizing Japanese, the way I was taught was that you don't extend vowels on proper nouns. So it's sort of a tricky situation, because like, is the kanji for Kokichi's surname Oma, yes, it is technically, it is an extended vowel. It would be, it's, you know, Oma, not Oma. However, we don't romanize proper names with extended vowels, because it would get horrifically messy. Because that's when you end up with like I I think shuichi would be like shuuichi, or like trying to think of some of the others, like oh god, yeah. um Korekyo Shinguji, you know, it'd be like Shinguji, you'd have two U's. So yeah, it's just like a formality. That is it wrong when people write OUMA? No, not technically. But every time I try to do it, I hear my professor screaming in my head. Is the best way to put it. Like, I hear my professors being like, that's not how you spell that. That's wrong. No, that's wrong. So, I'm sorry. I spell it OMA because I used to translate for the freaking government, and that's just how I would have done it, and that's how they would have had me do it. And if I had written OUMA, they would have said no. They would have told me not to do that. So, I'm sorry. I have nothing against people spelling it OUMA, but I can't bring myself to do it. So just don't get mad at me about it, all right? I'm not doing it out of like a lack of understanding. It's actually the opposite. I understand Japanese extremely well, and that's why I'm spelling it that way. Now you might be thinking, what the hell? If you're somebody who speaks Japanese, why are you using the kids' first names and not their last names? Like, why are you going by Kokichi and not Oma? In that particular case, it's more of a desperate need for consistency. It's like I'm using, like I've watched Let's Plays of V3 in Japanese. I'm well aware of the game in Japanese. And you know, that's a whole other topic, but I'm using the dub though for Amalgamate as the basis, and so just the part of me that desperately needs consistency is just like, if the dub writes out their names as just by first name, then that's just how I'm gonna do it. I'm sorry. It's not like I'm like, oh, like I don't want to like be authentic. It's just like, I just want to stick to one thing to keep things easier. It's just for simplicity. So, yeah, I'm only using their first names, and I know there's the whole thing of like, it's not that Kaito calls Shuichi bro, like he calls him Shuichi instead of Sayara. Like, I know. I think all of that's perfectly fine in a fic. I feel like I'm at a point where I don't even like notice, like it's all interchangeable to me. If somebody calls him Shuichi or calls him Saihara, you know, if it's Kaito or if it's Momota, like any of that, I don't even, it doesn't even register in my brain. It's all the same to me. But yeah, just as far as consistency goes, I have chosen to just do things the way that the dub does them, because, you know, like I'm quoting lines from the dub and stuff, like, so if somebody calls, you know, like if someone calls Kokichi in the dub, I'm not going to change the line so that it now says Oma instead, even though the rest is a direct quote. Does that make sense? I don't know. Sorry. I hope I'm not like making anyone mad with this stuff, but I just felt like I needed to explain myself a little bit, because I'm sure some people are kind of wondering like why I'm doing certain things the way I'm doing it. And yeah, it's not coming from like a lack of understanding of Japanese. It's actually extremely the opposite of that, where it's coming from a place of too much formal training in Japanese. But hey, at least now you know, like when I put stuff in the story that's like about Japan, it's like kind of authentic, right? Some of it's like based on things like my love of strawberry Tairoku and stuff like that. But yeah, anyways, I'm sorry. I needed to like get that off my chest. I feel a little better now. Okay. Shoot, we should end on a more positive note. We're coming up on an hour now. What's a fun thing? What's a fun thing? Oh no, I'm on the spot I don't have notes for this. Oh god, panic. I have no idea. I guess the most fun thing I can say is if it seems like I'm on a mission to tell every horse joke possible in Amalgamate because Kokichi is the king horse, you're correct. I have a list of horse jokes prepared. I'm sure I won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm damn well gonna try. Anyways, I think I'll stop here. Yeah, for part 3, we'll finally get some questions from some other people. I think I have like maybe 6 more questions, so I'll reach out again to the Discord server and ask if there's any more. If anyone watching this has more, feel free to leave a comment asking questions. But yeah, we should be able to wrap this up in part 3, no problem. No idea if I'm gonna color this. We'll see how it turns out. But anyways, thanks for joining me for this sesh. And yeah, I will see you all in part 3.